Hello, welcome to class. Last week we talked about the anatomy of the ear and I gave you some guided notes. You need to get those papers out and available. They look like this.
Wake up good low.
That. I'll give you a minute.
Sorry.
All right, we ready?
See.
So let's review some ear anatomy real quick. What is this outside part of your ear called? The part here on the outside. Auditory opening is the hole inside your ear. What is this part on the outside part? Is your pinna. Sometimes it's also called the auricle, but pinna is the term we're going for. A lot of you think it's cartilage. It's made of cartilage, but cartilage is in your knee and in your nose and all kinds of other parts of your body. That's just the part that gives it some structure. So this is a weird, I'm sorry? This is the auditory opening, which is kind of weird that they labeled that, but that's what that is. That's the hole in the side of your head, which is significant. Okay, what does the pinna do?
It makes the sound like go into your ear.
Okay, it funnels the sound into your ear. It also helps with directionality, so you know which way the sound is coming from.
Yeah.
If it's behind you or above you or wherever. All right, so here's the auditory opening. What is this part called?
Auditory canal.
That is the, oops, let me catch up on the click.
That's the ear canal.
Your ear canal or your auditory canal. And what's at the end of your auditory canal?
Eardrum.
Tympanic membrane.
This is your tympanic membrane. It's a very thin layer of skin. Looks like a drum head. That's why it's called tympanic, or your eardrum. That seals that part off. This is the line between your outer ear and your middle ear. Is that tympanic membrane right there. And it seals that off. Then on the back of your tympanic membrane,
It's the hammer.
okay, we'll come back and talk about that. The malleus, the incus, and the stapes are the three bones that connect to the back of your tympanic membrane. Or the hammer, the anvil, and the stirrup, because that's what they look like. Those are objects that they resemble. But the scientific names are malleus, incus, and stapes. Now to come back to that, to come back to this one, this dark region right here, it's only dark on here. This is filled with air, but it's sealed off from this part of your ear. Your eustachian tubes connect your middle ear to your throat. So the other end of this opens in your throat, and that's usually kind of sealed off to keep that area protected, but they do open up at times to equalize the pressure in there, and that's when your ears pop. That's the eustachian tubes coming open.
You can also get fluid in there. And that's how
You can also get fluid in there. We're going to come back and talk about when things go wrong. But I just want to review all the bits first. But yes, we will come right back to that. What happens when things go wrong? All right, so this here is your middle ear. The bottom of the stapes fits into this guy.
Circular. Or no, that's the cochlea.
That's the cochlea. All right, so that, and right here, the part where the stapes meets the cochlea, that's the line between your middle ear and your inner ear. So that's kind of where that division is. This is the cochlea. That's the one that actually does the work of hearing. Okay, that's where that happens, is here inside your cochlea. What were these guys up here? Now,
Semicircular.
semicircular canals. They're not actually part of hearing, but they help with balance. They help you know which way is up. So when you get vertigo, that's these guys getting confused. Okay.
That'd be really weird if someone was born without them.
You wouldn't be able to walk probably.
Well, yeah, it would cause some significant problems. I don't know what would happen if you didn't have semicircular canals, but lots of people, I mean, if you have problems with them, it can cause vertigo and balance issues and stuff like that. All right, oh wait, let me click. All right, so the last part here is your auditory nerve. And that connects your cochlea to your brain. So your cochlea does the work of hearing. It takes all of this mechanical movement, remember? Because you've got sound waves traveling in, and they vibrate, and they go all the way in. And this is, why is this so deep in your head? Why do we need this auditory canal?
So it doesn't get damaged by anything.
To protect all of this, right? So that it doesn't get damaged, because if these little tiny structures were on the outside, we just knock them off real quick, and they, but they need to be protected. So that's why we have all of this, so that this can be deep and inside your head. So we have all this mechanical movement to get that information in there to conduct all of this stuff. Like a train conducting, like something in chemistry being conductive means electricity can pass through it. Here we're getting movement passing through all of this. So we get to the cochlea, and that's where there's hair cells in there that wave back and forth with all of this movement. And your cochlea transmits that into electrical signals. And then they can send those to the brain, and then the brain hears those electrical signals and says, oh, here's what I'm hearing right now, and makes sense of what you're listening to. Okay, so now let's so that's how we hear, right? That was the first part of the lesson. Today, the second half of the lesson is, or why we don't, okay? So we're going to talk about problems with the ear. What happened instead of a pinna looking like this, your pinna looked like that? Would you still be able to hear?
Yes.
If you had like a malformed pinna that wasn't, you didn't have great big ears, you had little teeny tiny ears. Or if there was some sort of trauma and you had no ears, like your ear got cut off.
It would be harder to hear because the sound can't travel inside as well.
So would you be totally deaf though?
No.
No, it would be harder to hear. You're right, it would be harder to hear, and it would reduce some of what you could hear, but it would not make you totally deaf. Here's your auditory canal. What happens if instead of being this big, your auditory canal is only this big?
It would reduce some of your hearing.
Okay, it's gonna reduce some of your hearing. Would you be totally deaf?
No.
Probably not. What happens if, pardon me, don't get seasick while I do this.
Or do.
What happens if this auditory canal gets filled with wax?
It blocks the sound so you can't hear as well.
Okay, is it going to block the sound? Is that going to make you totally deaf?
No.
No, okay. So earwax can build up in here. It can even totally clog that if you have some serious ear problems. But for the most part, that's not going to make you totally deaf. It might make things sound a little mushier, okay? Has anybody ever had swimmer's ear?
Yes. Oh, it sucks.
Okay, here's what happens there.
It sucks.
All right, so now this ear canal is nice and straight, but not everybody's is that straight. Sometimes they bend a little, or sometimes you have wax in there, and then you go swimming like in unchlorinated water. Usually not the ocean, but sometimes like you go in a lake or a creek or something, and then water builds up in these spots, and because it can't get out, right, because lakes, you have dips and curves or whatever, that water gets in there and it can't get out and it gets infected. That is an outer ear infection. And it's that dirty water in there that can't drain properly, and you get an ear infection. Okay, does that make you totally deaf?
No.
No, it hurts, and it might reduce your hearing a little bit, but once you get this cleaned out, then it's better. All right. So nothing going on with your outer ear is going to take away all of your hearing. It might reduce your hearing, but it's not going to make you totally deaf, okay? Like I said, it might just make you hard of hearing, but tympanic membrane. There can be things, like I said, this thing is so thin you can see through it, but there can be things that tear a hole in that. Very loud noises, like if you're around an explosion or something, can actually rupture that eardrum. If Aslan just mentioned fluid building up in your middle ear. If this fills up with fluid in here, like when you're sick, if you get a middle ear infection, that's where snot backs up inside that middle ear. Yum.
Not yum.
And doesn't drain right.
Ew, weird.
And it's nasty. It's totally nasty. That was sarcasm. That was a sarcastic yum. So sometimes when you're sick and everything sounds mushy, it's because, or the water level might even be up here, these bones are surrounded in snot, so they can't move very well. They're supposed to move back and forth, right? And bring that motion, all of this motion, the sound, they're supposed to amplify that sound by moving back and forth. But if they're in the water, can you move as fast in the water? Could you move as fast inside snot? No. So it reduces how much those can move, and that can reduce your hearing. A friend of mine who had such bad allergies for so long that his middle ear always looked like this, to the point that it actually eroded away his bones, and they came disconnected. So the joints that held them together dissolved. And he ended up having surgery where what they did was they cut off part of his ear canal here and moved it here, built him a new tympanic membrane, and then they replaced his ossicles with titanium ones and rebuilt all of this inside his ear.
So he's rubbed up.
So yeah, so now he's got little teeny tiny, and it's probably not exactly like the bones, but it's similar to them.
That cannot be an easy.
All right, I got a question.
It wasn't an easy surgery, but it wasn't also the most invasive thing ever. So it was. I don't think they even had to really cut on his head that much. Yes.
So what happens like to the people who were born with a hole in their eardrum?
What happens? People who are born with a hole in their eardrum. Sometimes you need a hole in your eardrum. So that is going to reduce how much you hear, because instead of being a taut drum, it's now going flat, 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 because there's a hole in there, right? Any of you have tubes growing up?
I don't think I
Nobody? Oh, usually half the class raises their hand. Wow. Okay. What happens is sometimes because if this won't drain right and your ears won't pop and they're always full of things, sometimes the doctor will purposely drill a hole through your tympanic membrane and put a little rubber hose in there. It's got a little kink in it, looks like that. Okay? And those are called pressure equalization tubes. So because your ears can't pop, they'll actually put a little rubber tube in there to help keep the pressure equal, because it won't drain right. Part of the reason kids need that is when you're a baby and you're laying down all the time, your ear canals are like this, and that way they drain properly because you're laying down. But as you grow up, they straighten out, because then as an adult you spend more of your time standing up and not like all of your time laying down. Well, as you're a kid, sometimes it takes a while as you grow up for those to straighten out. So that's why little kids have more problems with eardrums. They also don't know how to blow their nose right. How gross does that sound? I'm sorry?
I said unless you're lazy.
Unless you're lazy. And that's why sometimes little kids struggle with this more. So sometimes they'll put those tubes in their ear and purposely put that hole in there. And that's why you can't swim with tubes, because you don't want that water, that pool water or whatever, going down here and getting in here. All right. So those are middle ear problems. Is any of that going to totally take you out of the running for hearing anything? No, it's going to be problematic, but it's not going to make you totally deaf. Okay. The friend with the ear things, I was at his house yesterday, as a matter of fact, and his daughter was complaining about when he's on Zoom meetings, they're really, really loud. I'm like, we need to buy Dad some good headphones so he can have his Zoom meetings in quiet. So he's trying to work from home, and his meetings, he's got to just turn the computer up really loud so he can hear. And the rest of his family's a little annoyed by it. But he hasn't come begging me to teach him sign language, right? He's not totally deaf. It's just mildly annoying. All right. Cochlea. Inside your cochlea, there's all these little hair cells. There's millions and millions and millions of them. There's one for each frequency. So each pitch. So you can hear high pitch and low pitch and stuff like that. So like I said, they're supposed to wave in the breeze. But what happens if they're too short? They can't wave. What happens if they're broken? They can't wave. What happens if they're stiff? They can't wave. How much are you going to hear then? If you don't have any of those hair cells, how much are you going to hear? Nothing, right? If you only have long ones and not short ones, then you're only hearing low frequencies and not high frequencies, okay? So if there's any problem with your cochlea, that might cause a mild hearing loss. That might cause a total hearing loss. There are stories of kids without a cochlea. Something goes wrong and that just doesn't develop properly. A cochlear implant is when these hair cells aren't working right anyway. What they do is they surgically open all this up. They actually, it's kind of gross, ready? They make an incision behind your ear here and flap your pinna over so that it's sitting on your cheek so they can get into all of this. And then they take an electrode, let me change colors here. They take an electrode and they thread it through here. And it's got 26 channels on it instead of the thousands you normally have. It has 26 channels. And then where is it? On this part of your head, right here where this bone is, they actually scrape away part of the bone and put a magnet in there. And it has a string that runs to here. So again, all of this is inside your head. Actually, it probably, I don't know if it goes this way or goes down that way. Anyway, the processor hooks onto the outside through that magnet in your skin. So one half of the magnet's on the inside, the other side's on the outside of your skin, and it globs on right there. And that's the computer part that does all the thinking for you. This replaces your cochlea. Now, it's going to destroy anything that's already in that cochlea. So that's why cochlear implants only work for people who have a severe hearing loss, because it's going to wreck anything you had left. So if you only have a mild hearing loss, you don't need a cochlear implant. Okay? This is only for a severe hearing loss, because that's going to destroy all those what hair cells are left. And then you only hear those 26 frequencies. So it sounds very digital and robotic, but some people think it's better than nothing. It's better than the hearing you didn't have before. So that's how a cochlear implant works. What happens if your auditory nerve gets too hot? Like if you're as a kid, you run a high fever and this fries. How much are you hearing now? You're not, or not very much. There was a reality show. They tried to launch a reality show about 3 years ago about different deaf families and their experiences. And in one of them, the family takes their little boy because he wants a cochlear implant, so they take him to the doctor. And the doctor says, yeah, here's the problem. He doesn't even have an auditory nerve. So we can't give him a cochlear implant because there's no way to send those signals to his brain. Sorry, he's ineligible. And they can't get one because he just doesn't actually have this. I've heard stories of like kids born addicted to drugs where mom had a crack habit and they didn't have an auditory nerve. As one of the birth defects caused by her drug problem. Okay? So that's kind of some of the different things that can happen. If you have a problem with your outer ear, that's going to cause a mild hearing loss. This is a mild to moderate hearing loss if there's a problem with your middle ear. But all of this is just conducting the sound to the cochlea. If you have a problem with your cochlea or that nerve that's going to your brain, or with your brain, because you can have problems with your brain as well. I. King Jordan, who was the first deaf president at Gallaudet University, he, in his 20s, was in a motorcycle accident and had brain trauma, and that caused his deafness. So that wasn't this that was the problem. It was his brain further down that caused his deafness. Okay? So anything here is a conductive loss. I'm sorry, to hear is a conductive loss. This is a sensory loss because you can't sense it. And this, on your brain, is a neural loss. Actually, that is where we're headed here at the end. So there's a table. Let me get my scribbles off of here. There's a table on the bottom of your sheet. And that's where we're going to put these notes. Okay. So we're talking about hearing loss. We have, yes.
I felt kept my eyes closed.
Okay, well, just do your best to stick with this now, okay? All right. So a conductive loss means you have a problem with your outer ear or your middle ear. It cannot conduct the sound down into your inner ear, okay? That's only going to cause a mild degree of loss, maybe a moderate loss, okay? But mostly that's just going to make it harder to hear because it's not getting that sound to your cochlea like it needs to. And is it correctable? Often, yes. Okay, they can do surgery. Like I said, my friend who got his titanium ossicles and his new tympanic membrane, they have been known to make pinnas out of cartilage taken from other parts of your body. Here lately, they've been 3D printing new ears. They take like actual like biomatter and 3D print ears that will graft on and work just like a regular ear. Sometimes if little children have their auditory canal is too small and collapse, they can kind of go back in and rebuild that and open it back up. So those conductive losses are usually mild and we can often correct them. All right, a sensory loss, that means you cannot sense, you can't do anything with that sound. That means that's a problem with your cochlea. It might be a mild loss if your hair cells are just a little tired. or you don't have quite enough of them, or certain sets of them don't work. By the way, too much loud noise can make those hair cells, they get tired of doing this, so then they just kind of, and they don't work very good after a while. By the way, when a hair cell dies, it can't come back. It can't be replaced. You don't grow a new one. Like the hair on your head falls out and new hair grows in. These are not, this isn't really hair, and it doesn't come back. So once it's gone forever. That's why old people can't hear very well. So this can be a mild loss, like someone who just had their headphones on too loud for too long. Let this be a warning to you. Turn down the music. Turn down the music. Turn down the music. Turn down the music. Okay. Because if you have, we have these really cool, and now you can put them in your ear and crank it up nice and loud and all that. But too much exposure to loud noises will cause those there's hair cells to wear out because they're working too hard too much when it's too loud. So turn the music down. Can we correct this? No. Now maybe we can give you hearing aids, maybe we can give you a cochlear implant, but we cannot go in and, like I said, regrow this hair cells. We can't give you a cochlea transplant. We can't do any of that stuff. There's not a lot we can do to fix that. Cochlear implant is a cheap approximation. And then a neural loss, that's a problem with either your auditory nerve or your brain. Like I said, the nerve that sends it from the cochlea to your brain, or the brain itself if you had a head trauma. Again, that can be mild or that could be profound, anything in between. And no, that's not really correctable. There's nothing we can do. We can't give you a new brain.
Well, I mean,
And hearing aids may or may not work, but that's about all we can do. All right, does that make sense? Okay, don't get sick again. All right, I want to rebuild our ear again. Yes, we're gonna rebuild our ear. So, Jonathan, come back and be our pinna.
Russell.
And then what comes next?
The ball. I did.
What comes next after the pinna? What comes next? Auditory canal. Who's our auditory canal? Inez. And then at the end of the auditory canal is tympanic membrane. Roger.
That was me.
And then at the tympanic membrane, then we have ossicles. 1, 2, 3. Come ossicle. Come oscillate.
Shimmy, shimmy, shimmy.
Remember, to oscillate means to move back and forth. So that's what they do.
Pelvics.
I'm moving you again. All right. Then what? 3 ossicles, and then
The cochlea.
the cochlea.
And then the auditory.
And then the last part is the auditory nerve, which sends a signal to the brain. Miles, for your auditory nerve?
Yeah.
Yes. Go. Go be nervous. Okay, so normally the pinna looks like this, right? But now what if he looks like this? How much are the rest of you going to be able to work? Right? Okay, so instead of this, what if Inez is this? Or what if she's filled with earwax? How is that going to work? Right? Okay, tympanic membrane turns this way.
I was this way.
No,
Yeah,
the other way.
because
Yes,
he
if I
had
had to
to
push
push
me.
No, you go the other way. If I told you that way, it was wrong. So you vibrate back and forth this way. So what if? So think about a drum head with a hole in the middle of it. How well is it gonna thump? It's not gonna.
No, it's gonna
thump, right? It's gonna just whoosh. So if he can't vibrate right, that doesn't work right. Okay, ossicle. So you have a hand here, and then your shoulder to shoulder, and your shoulder to shoulder. So as he vibrates, she vibrates, and then she vibrates, and then she vibrates, and they all vibrate together. But what happens if there's a break in the Sydneys? So he's vibrating, she's vibrating, she's vibrating. Is this Sydney vibrating? No, because
Really?
there's this disconnect here. So is all the information getting to the cochlea that needs to? No, because there's a break here. And this Sydney just vibrates back and forth and nothing happens. Okay? So this Sydney can't do her job. Poor Sydney. All right. Sorry, I have to be gaffer for a minute here. Okay. So, Alex is supposed to wave in the breeze as you hear sound. Alex, wave in the breeze.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, but if something's really low, then we're doing this. Okay? And one of those breaks. Now, are we getting as much information?
All right, let's chop off his arm.
No. All right, auditory nerve. If he's gotten too hot and we tried the system, can he send the signals to the brain like he's supposed to?
Nope.
No. Okay? If he didn't develop right as birth defect, he's not there. Then it's not getting anything done. Okay? So remember, all of this. Oh, hold on.
We have to move it again.
I gotta move it again. All right. So from your outer ear
All the way
to the edge of your middle ear, conductive loss. If we keep going through the ossicles, that's also a conductive loss.
To the end of the sentence.
So to the middle ear and from your outer ear and your middle ear here to the end of the Sydneys, that is all a conductive loss. Okay?
And then sensory.
Problem with your cochlea is a sensory loss.
Yeah.
And a problem with your auditory nerve is a neural loss. Often, these are lumped together. So it's conductive or sensory neural. Because a lot of times, while you're still alive, they can't figure out what's going on in here. This they can figure out. When these boys are having problems, they don't know exactly how to identify that always.
Don't worry, they don't.
Okay.
either.
All right, ear, you may sit.
Miss Bennett?
Yes. Hold on just a minute.
We were banned from the restroom.
All right, I hope that helped. Thank you for participating. We will be taking a test on Friday. Hear me say that? Let me get close up in your face and say taking a test on Friday. Okay, taking a test on Friday. This will be on here, so make sure you know your ear bits. I will give you a word bank, but you still need to know what goes where, okay? So keep these notes and study them. Tomorrow we're going to review. Friday we're going to test, and I will see you later.